Hello my friends, welcome back to CTO Demon channel. Today is another core curriculum talk. The talk is Retrograde Channel Crossing 2. This is supplementary video to the first video, to serve or not to serve, that is the question. Link in description below. And this video really is the rest of collateral channel crossing. Obviously, you can't do all of it in one video. The content is going to be a little bit about septal crossing, a little bit about epicardial crossing, a little bit about what wire to use when the first wire we choose doesn't work, and finally a little bit about retrograde options such as grafts, which are not really collaterals, that we can use. So first, if we are going from the PDA to the PDA septum to LAD CTO, often the takeoff of these septal channels are quite 90 degrees and sometimes even retroflex, and be quite difficult to wire down the PD and up these channels. In this case, the use of a dual lumen catheter is very useful. If we put the monorail segment of the dual lumen catheter onto the wire in the PDA, we can connect a syringe and do selective injection through the over-the-wire lumen and light up the channel quite nicely. Similarly, we can put a wire through that and wire through and overcome that retroflex bend. Sometimes LED also have quite retroflex septums and septal channels, and this technique can be used in the LAD too. The other very powerful way to use a dual lumen catheter is when you're having difficulty actually crossing the septal channel due to tortuosity. You can replace your microcatheter in the septal channel with a dual lumen catheter, putting the monorail segment on the wire in the septal channel. Then you can use a contrast injecting through the over-wire lumen, and you can light up that septal channel while you're wiring it. This is similar to normal wiring where you can see the vessel course with contrast while you're wiring, and it provides a very powerful technique to overcome septal channel tortuosity. So I recommend it to you warmly to try out if you're ever stuck crossing a septal channel. Now, we said last time that in the LAD to RCA septals for RCA CTO, the first septal often gives off a small faint channel that goes to the proximal PD or the proximal PL. This is what we call the master channel, as people who are very experienced know that there's this channel and they go for a selective injection to find it and cross it, and everybody is very impressed. Now, for the PD septal collaterals to LAD CTO, there's also a master channel, and this is the very last PD septal, in the very distal PD that goes to the LAD. The septum channels that come off the PD usually are very 90 degrees, but as you go down the distal PD, they start to slant more and the angle becomes more favorable for a wire to enter. And as you get more distal, actually the channels are less tortuous. But often we don't see this because when we're doing a guiding injection, we let our feet off the pedal too soon before the distal PD is filled up, so we don't see this channel. And if we do a selective injection in the PD, often we don't fill the PD well to see the very distal. So sometimes when I'm doing a PD septal surfing to the LAD, I would put the microcatheter way down the PD and try to get a distal shot to check for this kind of very distal PD septal channel. That may be easier than all the other channels there are. So what about secondary wire choice? Well, I said before, for people who are beginning to do retrograde, I usually recommend a SUO 03 to try to cross septal channel. But what if that doesn't work? Well, Xeon is quite a reasonable wire to try. Xeon wire was around before SUO 03, and we used to be able to cross most of our channels with the Xeon wire. So it's reasonable to try that. But really, I guess you all know by now what I'm going to say. Anatomy dictates strategy. If the problem is a very acute bend in the septal channel, then you need to increase the bend of your SUO 03 wire. Or you can increase the bend of your Xeon wire. There's something called broken tip Xeon. This is when you press the Xeon tip on an introducer so that you break the core. You get a little bit more than 90-degree bend in the tip of the Xeon wire. And this broken tip Xeon is actually quite good at getting around these acute bends. Sometimes the channels are just very faint and very small. For this, I like to use the XTR. The XTR can usually find very small channels, even when they're quite tortuous, and wiggle through them to the other side. So you can see, if the problem is bend, I tend to use a Xeon with a broken tip. If the problem is fine channels, I tend to use XTR. So I rarely end up using a Xeon Black. But there are occasions when they're medium size with a series of tortuosity, sometimes Xeon Black is quite good. Again, to say Xeon Black should be reserved for people with some experience in septal channel crossing, so they know not to push too hard with that kind of wire. So that's probably all I have for septal crossing. What about epicardial channels? Well, for epicardial channels, I think everybody now pretty much go with a 003 as a first line wire, supported by microcatheter. Again, if there's acute bends, you can increase the tip bend of the 003. You can push the microcatheter closer into the radio-opaque part of the 003 wire, giving it more support to go around these bends. There are two particular problems that are a bit more difficult. One is the branching. Sometimes the epicardial channel goes straight in this way, but the straight is not the right way. It doesn't go to the RCA or the LA or the circumflex. Instead, it has a bend that comes down, then that's the right channel. And the bend may be quite retroflex. In these cases, just like in the LAD septum, you can put a dual lumen catheter in and use the secondary wire to wire that retroflex bend across. Sometimes it's got a small side branch. The main branch may be quite big, maybe a 1.5 or even a 2.0 epicardial channel. But there's a small side branch, a 0.5 or 1 millimeter side branch that goes off. And that side branch is straight. So your wire keeps going straight into the small side branch, and it cannot make the bend round. In these cases, sometimes a knuckle XTR is quite good, because the knuckle XTR forms quite a small knuckle, and the knuckle is not going to go down the small side branch. So I might switch to a small knuckle XTR and try to knuckle around that bit, and then carry on. So these are the tips and tricks for overcoming problems. Again, Xeon Black can be used for the epicardial channels, but again, you need to take care not to be too aggressive with the Xeon Black wire. Finally, the retrograde options that are not collateral channels, and these are the grafts. Now, if the graft is patent, it's easy. You just wire like you wire a normal vessel. But if the graft is occluded, then it's more difficult, because there's usually quite a lot of uncertainty about the exact location of the distal graft and the landing onto the CTO vessel. So we recommend using an intermediate penetration blunt tip force wire, like UB3 or a pilot wire, something that's not going to go out of the vein graft, and to wire down. Now, if you have collateral fill and you can see the tip of the wire getting to the right place, or you have a contrast or surgical clips that helps you, or if you have calcium that can help you, then you can be sure your distal is in the right place. Then it's easy. You just push the microcatheter across, do a tip injection, and off you go. But if you're not sure, well, you have two options. If you're very uncertain, then I will probably give up on that graft. But if you think you're still in the graft, but you're not sure how the distal lands, sometimes I push the microcatheter down and do a tiny carlino, tiny bit, just a tiny bit of contrast to light up the graft, and you could be sure that you're in the graft and you can see a distal a little bit. If I manage to cross the graft, I never open the graft before I do the CTO, because as long as I can get the microcatheter across, I can do the retrograde. So if I can't get the microcatheter across, I'll use a small balloon to open it, maybe a 1.0 balloon, and then get the microcatheter across. And I don't balloon up the graft, because if you balloon up the graft, thrombus from the graft may fall down distally, and you might cause a myocardial infarction. So it's best to leave the occluded graft occluded. And when you finish the CTO, just leave it occluded. So those are the tips and tricks for collateral options, retrograde options, and collateral channels. It's not a complete review of all collateral crossing, of course. That's beyond the scope of this video. But I hope these two videos together help you, and you have increasing success of your retrograde crossing. And it's something that's quite happy and enjoyable. I think when you cross a difficult retrograde channel, that gives you quite a happy time, and I hope you enjoy that. If you like the video, please press like, and if you want to subscribe to see new videos, press the subscribe button. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.